Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this session of KWANZAA Self-Determination, where we are self-determining what the community in the future looks like for Dayton, Ohio. We have subject matter experts up here who will introduce themselves over the areas of education, neighborhood and housing, health and human services, food security, workforce and economic development. And at this time, we'll open the floor for that. Tiffany, I'm sorry, when Kamo gets here, could you flag me? Because he's going to pass out. We also have literature that you all will obtain. Actually, I can pass them out now if somebody wants to pass them around. These are questions that you, as a resident, thank you, Deja. So as a resident, we prepared some questions that you can ask candidates so that, around all of these areas, so that when you go to vote, you're voting informedly and you're voting based on people who are going to meet your needs in your household and what's going on outside your door. So these are things you can take with you. We want to encourage people to vote by candidate as a person and not by party affiliation. Okay, because that's where we have unfortunately gone wrong over the years. Is just voting by party affiliation instead of voting about what we know a candidate is going to do and their platform that aligns with what we need in our community, in our household, and right outside our door. So make sure you guys take those with you. It's two-sided, and then we'll go from there. So at this time, I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. They have 2 minutes to talk about their area of expertise and how those areas impact the community. Then I'll open the floor. I'll start out with asking them some questions because we want to make sure that we are referencing recent events that have seriously impacted our community, like the closing of Aldi's, the closing of Good Samaritan Hospital, the demolition of Good Samaritan Hospital, food security being an issue in our area, and different things like that have happened with our education system, our school system that has been barely making it by with the S grade standing. And these are the subject matter experts who will talk about the different levels of government that are responsible for impacting those areas and ensuring that they are sustainable so we can be whole as a community. So with that being said, the mic's on the table, Felicia. If you want to start, or you can pass it down to Shanice and you guys can introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Felicia Charlton. I am a retired educator. I was a principal for, I was a principal for 10 years. 7 of those years was with Dayton Business Tech, an alternative dropout recovery school that's downtown. Also 3 years in Trotwood and 1 year at Life Skills, which is currently another name. I'm currently an entrepreneur, educator, consultant, and playwright. I transitioned from education because of the politics of education. I love children, I love our community, I love educating us, and I did it to the best of my ability. But my lack of knowledge about the politics of how children are educated in our community, not by others, but by ourselves, was something that I was totally unaware of, which really pulled me out of education and led me to do other things with the understanding that I'm still responsible for being an educator in my community. So some of the things about education that are important to me is to use your voice for positive. We always talk about when we have a problem, this is extremely important, but some people advocate privately. I think that we can keep more teachers and educators in education if we are advocating for the things that are working, not just for the things that are not working. That's something that I saw. I saw a lot of good teachers who no one ever said anything to, but we spend a lot of our time focusing on what's not happening instead of trying to develop what's actually right. In my educational career with dropout recovery, a lot of the things that I saw with the state legislation not approving or changing the laws wrapped around students who are in school more than 4 years. So not changing those proficiency laws, still having people in our community that are unable to graduate because of laws that they put into place in 1995 that they have changed because they did not work, but they have not changed the policy to go back and allow those other students the same opportunity. I actually wrote a letter to Kasich, and he said, thank you. That was the response, because as an educator, it really bothered me that now we figured out how to change education, but we're not doing a lot about it. So my thing is, I think that when we pick causes, a lot of us are strong in certain areas, but we need to focus and definitely get the word out about the things that we think are important. I don't think there's too much of us doing anything. I think that some of us get tired of the fight and we give up too early. Thank you.
Ashe, thank you.
And I am one of the co-founders for Neighborhoods Over Politics, along with Jamaica Garrison and Joel Thomas Jones. And I think that Ms. Philippia, as well as Jamaica, they hit the nail on the head. It's all about policy. As a former City of Dayton employee, I was with the City of Dayton for 7.5, 8 years. I managed the city's federal and state program, housing programs, the demolition programs. And in that capacity, I can really see the things that we weren't doing to really address the ills in our community. And this was prior to the economic downturn. And having that experience on the federal side and the local side, it really opened my eyes again to some of the issues and the ills that we weren't addressing in our community. And I ran for office in 2017, very naive to the whole process, very ambitious, but again, it allowed me to see how best we need to utilize our vote, and how we need to actually vet candidates more so than what we're doing. As Jamaica already stated, it is a problem, I would like to think, in the African American community in particular, is that we vote on party. We have this blinded party allegiance where we're voting for individuals solely on name recognition or whether they have a D behind their name. We need to look at candidates with a close eye and identify how best this individual is going to serve the interests of me, my family, and my community as a whole. How is this individual going to impact, again, policy? We have to start looking at policy. We look at name recognition, and to be honest, we in a room full of family, right? We look at the candidate, oh, they black, I'm voting for them. We're not looking at them, what experience, what education does this individual have? How is this person going to best impact policy that affect our community? You can't tell me that the demolition of Good Samaritan Hospital, the closing of Aldi's grocery store, the poor academic performance of our school district is not affected by those in power, those who sit on the dais. They have impact. And what do they tell you? Oh, that's beyond our reach. That is a lie. And if so, why are you there? We need to start again vetting candidates, identifying individuals who want to best serve our community. And the other thing is, we have to learn how to pass the torch. Yes. We have a community full of educators and entrepreneurs and those who have been ingrained in the political process for quite some time. But they are afraid to jump out and to support others, the up and coming new leaders in the community, because they're afraid that they're going to get ostracized, or they're going to get cut off from different funding streams that they may receive, or different perks that they may receive, or different committees or whatever. We have to look beyond that, and we have to start identifying how are we going to move our community forward. And that's where we fail. That is exactly why we failed. That's why we're in the predicament we're in now. So I'm challenging everyone from today on. We come together every KWANZAA event, and we kumbaya, and we say this, and we want to do this, and we break bread, and we fellowship together, and then we back to the same old routine. Back to the same routine. We have to start being innovative, we have to start being intentional, and we have to start doing things with purpose. And we have to make sure that we are, the number of people that's in this room right now, as well as in the large area, imagine if all of us were to get on one accord and to really push forward impact, so we can start seeing some implications of what we're trying to do to really start driving economic development and business growth and educating our young people, and just really start building up our community. We have the power. But we're not utilizing that because we have our own individual silos. But again, I'm challenging each and every one of us from this day forward, let's come together. Let's come together, let's start working together on one accord, and let's start putting our resources, our time, our energy, let's start putting our resources together to really start making an impact in this community. One last thing. I will tell you, quite honestly, I am frustrated. I am frustrated. I will be respectful because I'm in a sanctuary. But I'm PEO. I live in Southern Dayton View. And it hurts me to my core. To my core, the amount of devastation that our community, that we're living in. As if it's okay. As if it is okay that we have burned out buildings that have been sitting for 3 to 5 years and we're not doing anything about it. The fact that we have trash. The fact that we have just abandoned buildings on every corner. Blocks. Blight, empty. Sometimes you can't even tell whether a house is occupied or abandoned. Why are we allowing this? Why are we living like this? But yet and still we go to the ballot box and we voting for people who are not even taking the best interest at heart for us. And we're voting for them. I am tired of it. I'm looking out my window asking myself, why do I continue to stay here? Why am I staying here when those who I voted for or those legislators who are in office, they're not even doing us justice. They're not even doing anything for us. Why should I continue to put a roof on my house or new windows or even for that matter, cut my grass when I got potholes in my street? Enough is enough. We have to start doing more. It's good that each and every one of you are here today, but I challenge you. We got to step up and do something. Thank you.
Amen. I'll show you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Thomas. I am the owner and founder of Kindred Connections Therapy Center, where I provide mental health counseling to African American children, youth, and families impacted by trauma. And when I define trauma, it is any life event, any stressful life event is either overwhelming, unpredictable, or chronic, meaning that it happens over time. And I think the things that you two just described and what everyone else on the panel is going to describe and what we all know and see every day is trauma. And we live through it every day and we begin to normalize it as if it's a part of the African American experience, and then we have nothing that we foresee that we can do about it. So we become content with living with the potholes and content with living with the abandonment and content with the poor performance of our schools to the point to where it begins to diminish our mental health. And not only does that impact the parents within our homes, but then it begins to impact our children. And children have a different way of expressing trauma other than what parents sometimes express as their trauma. So when you see your child acting out, when you see your child upset, when you see your child lashing out at others, if we're not doing a good job of looking at that for what it is, we'll begin to define it as ADHD, opposition, defiance, everything other than trauma. So what I do is I work with families, I work within a community to make sure that we're looking at things from a clinical perspective. And I educate parents around what does trauma look like and how can that manifest in your household, and how can you begin to look at behavior differently, and then how can parents begin to respond differently when they do notice that their children are traumatized by the things that they experienced in school or within the community. So everything that people have defined and described, we have to begin looking at it from a different perspective. And we have to begin thinking about how do all of these things that our children experience and how things that we experience every day, how is that beginning to define what I define as self-efficacy? Self-efficacy is the degree to which we believe that we have it within ourselves to make change. So it's not just whether or not we're motivated to make change or we're convicted to make change, but do I even believe that I have the capacity to make change? And if our children have a low degree of self-efficacy, or if we have a low degree of self-efficacy, we don't even believe in our ability to make change. So sometimes we have to look at that before we can even begin to solve the problem. The problems are so complex, they're so diverse, they're so layered, they're so multifaceted, sometimes it's hard to even know where to begin. So one of the things that I work with my clients to do is begin looking at patterns, and that's kind of what Shanice was talking about, is we get used to it. So when I have them look at patterns, I try to get them to think about what are things that you do in your life that seem to reoccur time after time, year after year, month after month, that seems to go in this loop, and your life just kind of goes in a circle. Sometimes people describe it as they're feeling as if their life is operating on autopilot. And then I get people to think about a clock. And if you think about a clock, you have 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And even every time that clock ticks around the time, that can be considered a different pattern. And if you look at the pattern, you have to think about, when one thing happens in my life, your pattern says that when this happens, then I typically do this. When this happens, then I do this. When this happens, then I do this. So I get people to think about, how is your life going in this continuous loop or pattern? So that would mean I get upset at my job, and then I check out emotionally. When I check out emotionally, I stop taking care of my children. When I stop taking care of my children, then I'm no longer feeding them. When I'm no longer feeding them, then I stop going to work, and then it just continues to loop around and around and around. And you'll find that a lot of people's lives, even the ones who we come in contact with, is always the same issue, always the same problem, always the same complaint, always the same thing happening over and over again. So when we talk about disrupting patterns, what I begin to look at is, what can we do to institute something different in your life? How can you begin to think differently, look at this differently, perceive it differently, so that you can begin to disrupt the pattern? So that's pretty much the work that I do with clients. I also work with them on anxiety, depression, because a lot of the things that we experience in our community, it does create symptoms of anxiety, and it does create symptoms of depression. And a lot of it is situational. It's because of the ways in which we live and the way that we've adapted to living, that we develop these clinical diagnoses. And I work with parents and children understanding on how those things present, and then what they can do to offset it. I don't really focus a lot on coping skills, because I don't think this is something that we should learn to cope with. I think that what Shanice said is looking at the root cause of what's happening and what's occurring, and figuring out how we can cut it at the root. So one of the things that I'm looking at, that I will be doing in January, is starting a women's group. My goal is to work with African American women, like it or not. That's who my target and focus is. And we're going to be focusing on, how can we begin to help parents move out of poverty, and what does that look like? Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and how she defined racism, white supremacy, and how that impacts our life from a day-to-day basis. And we're going to break down her theory of color consciousness, and how that plays out in our lives every day, and what can we do in those 9 areas of people activity in which we're impacted by racism and white supremacy, and how we can begin to disrupt those patterns, starting from the family and moving out into the community.
Before Tiffany goes, can everybody say disrupt? Disrupt. Oh, y'all so late. Can y'all say disrupt? Disrupt. Ashe. Ashe. Let's get it. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Wow, I'm honored to be up here with all of you all. So I am Tiffany Brown, family nurse practitioner, and my passion is really helping people understand what's really going on with their bodies, what they can really do about it, and what they're really willing to do about it. I call it real talk medicine, because a lot of times I think healthcare providers are talking over, through, around, and not really connecting. And it's from the critical connecting, listening to each other, being empathetic, where we move the needle forward. So I'm community-based. Right now I'm doing home visits for Medicare members, and I'm looking to expand that. I've done some school-based healthcare, but my passion is really education, and again, connecting people to what's going on around them. So when we think about, how to be politically active in healthcare, I think that it has to start with us in a sense, and we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. And so I've heard things, about, we have a choice. We can use our voices to make change, but we really have to believe that. And I think that, with everything that we're seeing around us, we're taught to believe that healthcare, is happening outside of us. What are the patterns that we see? When we have a problem Providers will want to give us pills and potions and, tell us to go have this procedure and go to these shiny new places. And the shiny places are not in our community, right? We're seeing all these urgent care centers pop up, these direct care centers while they're closing our hospitals, right? And so when we look at, healthcare, it's really assessing where we are. As a nurse, we're taught an acronym, ADPI. It's assess, diagnose, plan, implement, and evaluate. So first we have to assess where we are in our own healthcare. And that takes, being introspective, taking a moment to realize that we have a lot of wisdom within ourselves, within our minds, our bodies, within our DNA to heal ourselves. And that's kind of a new concept, but I think that it starts with us and recognizing how we feel in our bodies, and then it moves from us to our children, it moves to our elders, to our neighbors, to our communities, and saying, what are the healthcare issues that we're seeing? We can call them out. Name some for me, you guys. What are some conditions you see? Diabetes,
High blood pressure,
mental illness, high blood pressure. Yeah, so all those things are labels. All of those things are affecting us, right? But we don't have to claim that. But what we do need to do is know, what we can do about it, how we feel about it, talk about it, share our stories, because all of us here have experienced some of those things, whether it was ourselves or a family member. So when Good Sam Hospital closed, and I was involved in some conversations about, well, how do we respond to that? And so when we look at healthcare, it's changing in a way that, it's corporate, it's capitalism. They put these shiny buildings up and fill them with all this equipment, and then, the landscape changes. People can't afford the procedures. The payers decide they don't want to pay for those procedures. So closing hospitals is a business decision for them, right? So while it hurts us, they're protecting their bottom line, and it's business. So when that happens, we have to look at, prevention is really where we need to work anyway, right? In order to heal ourselves, we have to be aware of our mental health. We have to be managing our stress. We have to have, stress modalities, meditation, yoga, exercise. Some of the things that we know can keep us healthy are not complicated, you all. Not smoking, getting adequate sleep, eating healthy, getting plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, exercising regularly, managing our stress. Those are simple things, but in this context, and it's complex, as Monica said, there's a lot of things that are in the way of us seeing that. So I think it really starts with us assessing where we are, and then again, talking to each other, sharing our stories, looking at what we want in our community. We don't have things now, so it's a great time for us to have these meetings and these critical conversations, and I'm challenging myself to be a part of those conversations and start those conversations. What is it that we really need in our community? That starts with asking each other questions, surveying. Do we want urgent care centers? Do we want, houses that are set up like clinics? I mean, we can really have the power to design this the way we want to. We just have to believe that we can. And hold our leadership accountable for the policies, because it is about policy. So when we're voting and when we're interacting with politicians who come around when they want our vote, we need to have an agenda and a platform of things that we talked about that we want in our community, and say, hey, this is what we want. How can you help us get these things? And I believe we have the power to change this landscape, and I want to be part of that. So thank you all.
Amen, amen. Before Grant comes in, Tiffany dropped a couple nuggets that I wanted to make sure I made you guys aware of, people who are in the audience, because again, this is self-determination, right? Yes. So at this time, I want Miss Shamika Stevens to stand up. Miss Shamika Stevens is a certified yoga training professional. So if you have not already started making meditation and yoga a self-care priority, this is who you want to see before you leave tonight. Amen. Ashe. She didn't even know I was going to do that. I didn't even know how to do that. But you know how the Holy Spirit works. You know how the Holy Spirit works. Okay, so, and then we also have Miss Kenya Baker. Can you stand up, please? Miss Kenya Baker and her group, and I want to specifically focus on, because we have Mr. Greer here who's going to talk about the Gem City market and food security. But Kenya, I want her to, she's here for anyone interested in land trusts. You're interested in buying properties, you're interested in land, and the things that Miss Tiffany had said, this is who you want to get with, because they're doing trainings every Saturday. And one thing we hear people say, oh, I don't know, I never knew this, I never knew that. I'm making sure you guys are knowledgeable so that when you leave the room, you pass this information on, and we continue to educate and empower each other, because it takes a village. It's going to take more than these people on the panel to affect change, it takes each and every one of us. And if we just all focus on our block, our little bitty block, with probably 5 active residents on it, we can still affect change. We can still affect change. And I want to say Miss Anissa, I'm sorry if I messed up your name, Anissa Lumpkin. She also is an entrepreneur doing some things with her natural ingredients, with soap. And what's it called? Because I'm going to mess it up. Go ahead.
It's called Botchco. It's a bath and body company. We specialize in making all natural products, all natural ingredients, and we really are looking to specialize in teaching our people how to make the products themselves. So we're not relying on all these chemicals, commercial products, carcinogens that we're putting on our body, rubbing on our body every day.
And we have, amen. Y'all make sure that you get some mental notes who y'all need to connect with before you leave. We got my girl, Miss Duggar here. Could you stand up, talk about your oil, natural oils?
So my business is Just Oil Hair and Body Solutions, and I make hair oils, hair lotions, body lotions, and creams. Everything's made with all natural ingredients. And yeah, basically that's it. So when you don't have the artificial anything in it, it's whatever you use on your body, you can use in your hair. If you're using your hair, you can use it on your body. So it's balanced.
Amen, thank you. And I don't know this young lady's name. I just know this K-Mo's sister. If you can stand up, my sister. She is a real estate agent. And if you guys are looking for properties, if you're looking for businesses, commercial properties, this sister right here can help you out. Y'all didn't know we had all this in the room, did you?
Right.
Y'all didn't even know this. You know what I'm saying? See, I'm on network. I gotta get network too. As I say on my Facebook page, my network is my net worth. Go ahead.
And I also do natural hair.
And then, we'll get back to the program. I just got to shout out real quick K-Mo. K-Mo, please stand up. K-Mo is an investor. K-Mo will help you learn how to build wealth, learn how to buy up properties and flip properties and all that great stuff. This is what he does. K-Mo, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
So I'm very vocal about my interest and our interest in acquiring and retaining ownership of land in our community. The fact that when we vote, if we don't own in this country the way that they operate, then we don't control it. And so if we don't own land or we don't own businesses, they don't appreciate our vote. If we're renting and we're working with somebody else, they do not appreciate our vote. No matter how much we vote for them, they do not appreciate our vote. That's how their mind works. And we've been indoctrinated thinking that voting is the way, but it has to be something that precedes that, and it's the economic piece. And so for me, I'm really big about credit, using credit in a way that's considered unconventional to us, but the ones who we call the 1% use it in a different way, and we all have access to it. It's the one thing that we got by way of our struggle here that I feel like we don't utilize, but it's a tool that everybody in this room, if working together, could affect massive change in less than 7 generations.
And brother, if I get this wrong, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself. Stand up, because I know you do something. I just can't remember what it is. Nothing with the arts? No movie, no video production?
My name is William Boatwright. I do like community theater, musical theater in the city. There is a lack of presence of African Americans in that art form, so I try to be present as possible to represent our culture and our community.
Y'all see how he tried to just say there like he don't do nothing? Y'all see how he tried to do that? So this brother right here, if you want to get your children indoctrinated into the arts and culture, it is critical, and it's part of their self-care. I know because I went to Stivers for the arts. And so I'm just saying that the programming that has left our schools can be reignited by us, for us, through this gentleman right here. We can collaborate, because we're already talking through the Elders Council to doing some things for the children in 2020, that education piece, the STEM piece, but we can also add the arts piece. So brother, you are here for a purpose. All right, so back to Mr. Freeman.
All right. My name is Gregory Shonda Freeman. My background, I have a number of years working with the county in workforce development and assisting on economic development as well. Economic development being the well-being and quality of life for the community. And workforce is focusing on labor and helping people get to the position in life where they want to be in terms of jobs and careers. So in that time I've worked there, I have been around for the development of the Job Center, which many of you will know, as well as a number of initiatives to bring employers into the area. And what I can say is that it takes a partnership with the federal government, the local governments, and the private sector to make things happen in this community. What we experience often, just based on my opinion, is we have money and funding coming through the community for intended purposes. And that money is sometimes diverted into other places. And we've seen the results of that, the divestment in the Dayton community, and the resources being applied unequally. So we have what we need here, but it has to be equitable in terms of providing the service and the resources, and we should be holding our leaders accountable for that. The first thing that I think needs to happen is the people that love us show up in our community, and you see them on the daily, and our vote extends to how we spend our money. The money that we spend in our community helps our community, helps the taxes in our community. When we are forced, in many cases, to go outside of the community for health care, for a number of things, to buy groceries, and that's helping those communities, it's not helping our community. So we have to hold our leaders accountable and make sure that we are represented as well as the other parts of the community. So the people that you cast a vote for should be people that you see on the regular, that you are interacting with, that you understand what their agenda is, and then that you are a part of that agenda. So as a community as a whole, we need to start looking at that aspect as opposed to the name recognition or the party recognition. Who is holding my interest at heart and actually getting things done? And I don't want to hear about what you plan to do. I want to know what you've done.
Shane.
My name is David K. Greer, and as a member of the Dayton Africana Elders Council, I welcome you all to the second night of KWANZAA celebration. I have many hats that I wear, and as Ms. Turner-Sloss alluded to earlier, we have so many silos in our community, but the fact that we as a people don't trust each other as much as we should, it creates that bridge, it creates that gap. It does not allow us to do what last night was about, and that is to unify. We have to get beyond that. I remember growing up, I grew up in an area where there were 3 full grocery stores within walking distance, 3. And I saw over time how by design those grocery stores were removed from our communities. Just like retails, we used to have any and everything that we needed in our neighborhoods. But as I said previously, by design, they were removed for various reasons that we were told, but we know why. Because the end result was to deny us the amenities and quality of life factors. I speak of quality of life factors because I happen to also be chairman of the Northwest Priority Board. And being chairman of the Northwest Priority Board encompasses several things that I have to be involved in, or I choose to be involved in. or let me retract that and say that God places me to be involved in. And I accept that calling and have since the mid-90s. Being an activist in the community for our people was initially the reason why I got involved. However, I evolved into being an activist for all people. I was a former candidate for a city commission that taught me a lot by not winning, because in speaking and communicating with a lot of people and hearing those issues that they were subjected to that impacted their families, especially what has become a food desert on the west side of Dayton. I was instructed to speak about the food desert situation and leading into the things that contributed to us becoming a food desert is right along with everything else that we are subjected to. Institutionalization and systemic racism is real. And that means that any and every factor that we have to utilize in order to provide for our families, it's tainted, and it's tainted against us. And that is why we have to be willing and commit and even learn to trust each other better than we do, because we have to do it together. It's no waiting on the government infrastructure and those dollars that Brother Freeman was talking about that are unequally dispersed, but initially they were appropriated for those that are underserved. But that's the equation that we have been subjected to, right along with the system to deny us healthy foods, to deny us places to go as far as retail is concerned for our families. So it's all this same part of the equation. I say it's a conspiracy, and I'm not going to go into it because you've heard a lot of the components that contribute to that conspiracy. But I believe that is real, and that is to do away with the African American race. However, we can't let that happen. So another thing I'm involved with, to address the food desert issue is the building of a co-op grocery store, the Gym City Market. It's my community outreach person. I am a board member for the Gym City Market. And we've already broken ground, and we hope to have a freestanding grocery store with fresh produce and all the amenities that we need right there in our community on Salem Avenue. Now, that's just a portion, a geographical portion that we will serve. However, that does not mean that with the success of it, and it will be successful, that other co-ops can be built on the west side of Dayton and even outside of the west side of Dayton. So those are the things that we have to come together and support, and I'm sure that there are some applications for any that are not here, that are not members. I'm gonna put my community outreach person on the, So Kenya Baker, you can see her for those who are interested in that. But we have to address that issue consistently. Thank you.
Man, okay. How's everybody doing, family? Okay, y'all just gonna go ahead and give me the alley, right? Yes, sir. You can handle it. So I got a slam dunk it, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so hey everybody, my name is Jovan Webster. I'm a member of the Dayton community, especially the West Side. You know, not born, but raised here since I was little. And I'm a construction and renovation contractor out here in the community. So I've worked on a lot of these historical homes in the community. I did a lot of stuff with Brother Kamo and plan on doing a lot more stuff in the future with a lot of the kids' components in the vocational schools around, teaching them, you know, the ropes and showing them actual, tangible skills that they can be able to, you know, sustain themselves later on, instead of, you know, doing the old school way where we're always taught to, you know, go to school, go to college, and then work for somebody who's pretty much white, and then basically fill their pockets up, and then by the time you're 60 or 70 years old, you can retire with whatever's left, you know? So you pretty much live, you know, the majority of your life working for somebody and being a slave. And what I'm trying to do is basically, on my end, you know, show that, you know, that mold can be broken, you know what I mean? Because I'm a young age of 30, but I started this business at 28, and, you know, me on behalf of everybody else on this panel, you know, we're showing the example that revolution is happening right now. Yes. You know what I mean? Because, you know, you have people at a young age, millennials, that are becoming entrepreneurs because we know the condition our community is in, exactly what they need. We need people who will basically teach people how to fish, not give them the fish, but teach them how to fish. So, on behalf of, you know, my company, you know, I'm doing a lot of outreach in the community. And there's a lot of people, there's some people here in the building that are going to be working on some more of their properties as well. And I've worked on certain properties for certain people already too. So outside of that, I want to basically touch a little bit on when they're talking about sustainability, because that's what we're here for. We're talking about how to sustain the community for the benefit. Well, the definition of sustainability is basically to be able to keep basically our economy at a certain rate or a certain level for positivity, you know, in layman's terms. But when you think about that, where is our economy right now? And then what's the rate that we're keeping it sustainable? Because we already know that we pretty much live kind of like in a cage, and then somebody else has the key to it. And what Sister Monica said earlier was that some of us have now become conformed to the expectancy, like this is just what it is. You know, we don't have anything, no say-so or nothing to do about it, no way to get out of this box that we're in. And, you know, us being the examples of, you know, a way to get out of the box. I just want to be able to spread the message that just because you're young and there's a lot of influence from outer sources, it's always important to make yourself a symbol of your community. Never forget where you came from. Always be able to pay it forward and give back to your community, because these people in your community, they do rely on you. I mean, I know I have a lot of young people myself who look up to me now that I'm sure that I don't know, but I do know ever since I did open my business, there are a lot of young kids who are begging to work with me, and there's people who are my age and older who are begging to work with me as well, because I think more than the opportunity that I'm doing, I think that they gravitate towards the fact of the example I'm setting, you know, for our elders, for our parents, and for the ones behind me. It's just basically, I just want to make sure that we can, when I leave, all I'm trying to do is be a conduit for my community, basically to pass on the message that, you know, just because the numbers is low, just because certain people outside of our community are pushing us around or doing certain things in our community to make us feel like, you know, it looks like it's kind of this bleak. It's not, the fight's not over. The fight's not over. And as long as you have a skill, like construction, which I use, you can utilize that skill in order to build hope again. So what I do is construction, but really what it is materializing hope in my community. And to be able to do that is a powerful thing. I mean, we're underrepresented in the construction realm. Young black brothers, especially my age, were hot, like by a big number. And I've worked in different realms where it was just the good old boys, and I was the only brother in there, you know what I mean? So I had to be able to maneuver, learn in any situation I was in. So by the time it was for me to get on my own feet and basically create my own business at a young age, I knew what the odds were, and I knew pretty much what the opposition would say up against me, because make no doubt about it, even though I'm in business for myself, it's still hard. It's still hard to be able to maneuver in the construction realm, and on top of that, be a young black man. It's hard, and a lot of people do kind of second guess you. You know, I've got a lot of that, and a lot of times people don't believe you. I get that all the time. But then once my work, you know, is basically materialized and it's shown, a lot of people get inspired by that, white and black. A lot of people get inspired by that because it's a young man who statistically is not supposed to be doing what I'm doing. You know, and being able to be aware of that is a powerful thing. So I want to be able to pass that to young brothers and sisters, because I think black women need to be represented in the construction realm.
That's right.
So I say all that to say I appreciate y'all for coming out here. I don't want to be too long-winded, but and touching on one last thing, to being able to, you know, use our vote, to leverage our vote to get the tangibles that we need for our community. That's real serious, because as everybody said, and I'll just repeat it, we voted out of tradition, and we've seen how that's turned out. You know, so it's time for us to really start looking at politicians' policies, looking at their policies, regardless of their skin color, looking at their policies, and if the policies don't match up to the tangibles that we need in our community, we just can't vote for them. That's just what it's going to have to be.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. So on that note, I'm going to have, before you say anything, Mr. Greer, because I want to capitalize off of what my brother just said here, Ms. Cheryl Ann Harris, could you stand up, please? So this lady right here is my mother. Her name is Cheryl Ann Harris. In 2012, she's a definition of self-determination for me. So when you know all she's been through, you know it's going to take a lot to put a sister like me down, okay? So she had brain surgery in 2012, twice. And the thing she was most concerned with on that Christmas day was, guess what, y'all? Them cutting her hair. And I had her stand up as well, not just because she's my mama and self-determination, but also because she's a retired construction worker. So for those young women that you recruit that are interested in doing that, she can talk about how she navigated the racism.
And with all the respect, sister, I salute you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to interject that with 2020 coming up and so close, black women, this is your year. I just have to call it the way it is. You know, I mean, all the statistics is showing it. The leadership that has been in place all of my life, because the woman is the glue of the family unit. So, but we gotta do it. We gotta do it now, and you gotta lead. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's just how it is. So get ready and get busy. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to open the floor for Q&A, but before I do that, there's a couple more people that walked in, and I think Brandon McCain, are you here? Could you, real quick, let people know, as a resident with your current role, what they can come to you for as it relates to getting some results in the community?
Absolutely. My name is Brandon McCain. I'm the Montgomery County reporter. I'm one of only 7 African-American county elected officials. To me, titles, roles, none of that stuff matters. I put it all to the side because the most important role we all occupy is that as a concerned citizen. So to me, as an elected official, what accountability, which I believe everybody has talked about, what that means is that if you bring something to my purview and it's not directly one of my duties and responsibilities, my duty and responsibility becomes to find you an answer. And so I think that we too often have, because accountability is fallen by the wayside, we have not held people accountable who are purporting to serve us. But if someone doesn't know you, they won't sit down and talk with you, and they don't visit you, then that should tell you how they feel about you. And so I think that we just have to get back to the basics that all of our parents told us. So if I can help you with anything in the city, outside the city, my position is countywide. I'm the chief officer responsible for the safekeeping of the property records, but also for our veterans. I'm also a military veteran. I try to have my hand on as much stuff as I can, even though they tell me it's not my role and responsibility. I'm here to serve, so I will continue to be of service all the people in.
Okay. From the Dayton Young Black Professionals, can you stand up, please? Could you tell us a little bit about your organization so those that can be referred to you can get that networking impact that you guys bring to the community?
Like you said, my name is Dayton. I'm the executive director of the Dayton Young Black Professionals. Our mission is just to empower Black leadership. I'm sorry, to empower Black leadership, to put us in position or to help us create that bridge for opportunities that we don't necessarily know that we have or that it's available to us. We make that stuff attainable. So we're literally just for the people, 100 and 1,000 more percent.
You guys have heard from our experts. At this time, we will open the floor up to questions that you guys have as it relates to how, who, what, when, and where. If you could come up to this podium here, because we don't have a free mic for the group. It does work. It's right over here. So I have a young lady, I think I have somebody coming up, or are you leaving? Can you?
No, I have a question.
Okay, and then while she's coming up, we also have Ms. Carolyn Perkins in the back from the NAACP doing voter registration. So if you are not registered to vote, her and her crew, I'm sorry I don't have everybody's names from here, but if you are not registered to vote, please see her before you leave. If you if you know people in your family that are not registered to vote, please see her because you can still follow up with her after this event on another day. Or if you're not sure if you've been purged, she can tell you where to go check that information. Yes, Kenya.
So with regards to voting, we know that 79% of registered voters did not go out and vote. By a show of hands, can you raise your hand if you voted? Okay, so I'm not going to preach to the choir. However, I will pose the question to the panel. What types of strategies can we implement in order to get individuals interested in voting? We saw with Deion Sampson and Mary McDonald that 2 or 3 people made a difference. So how can we activate that 79% Black? And I have applications for Gem City Market.
Thank you. Does anyone want to take that, Felicia? Could you use the mic? Thank you.
I'm loud. In education, I think we need to be more purposeful about including it with our students. We view it as separate, and we need to include it. I know when I was a principal, I brought people in to register students, and I took my students out. And so I think that it's a part of them being responsible citizens, not just teaching them how to graduate, but how to contribute back to the environment that they're in. And so I think that just being more purposeful, starting with education, because we have access to your kids more than you do. And so that's something that you could advocate for in the school system, is saying, hey, are you getting these kids registered to vote? How can I help? Do you want me to come in and talk about it? You don't have to be a quote-unquote expert, because I know you've overcome or survived something when you're here, but this is something that you could do if you're interested in your kids doing this. Instead of saying the school doesn't have it, be a part of the reason they do get it. Does anyone else want to address that?
I think the other piece to that too is people honestly don't know the impact of their vote. They don't know that the street resurfacing or the red light cameras or the grocery store or the street repavement on how their vote impacts those decisions or those dollars to make those improvements. So again, it comes with that education piece and people just really understanding that how their vote impacts their day-to-day life and improving their quality of life. And then the other thing is real quick, this last election cycle, so I ran for the City of Dayton Commission for the 2nd time, and we fell short 4 percentage points, but we were encouraged, right? The other thing with that too is a number of people, they honestly didn't know who to vote for. The number of people that literally get out, they make the effort, which we, kudos, thank you, for coming to the voting location, the polls, but they ask the question, who do I vote for? What does this issue mean? Who's on the ballot? What is this role? The education piece is crucial. We have to make a concerted effort to really start not only educating but engaging our community members as well as our high school students at an early age, not just when they're juniors or, excuse me, when they're seniors, but letting them understand that it starts at an early age until it should be a course. Not just a topic that's glossed over through your social studies or your government course, but we need to make sure that our students are involved in that process at an early age and that they too are encouraging their family members, their parents, their guardians, whomever, to start taking an active role in voting.
And I would add to that, I'm sorry, Monica, were you going to say something as well? Go ahead.
If I could, sorry. So I just want to say, in terms of mental health, and everyone up here who is an entrepreneur, one of the advantages that we have of being entrepreneurs is that we have our own spaces. We have our own community who we support and who supports us. So in that, with the education piece, we have to be intentional about bringing that education to the people who are directly within our circle. So for me, if I'm seeing a specific number of clients within a specific week, then I could be intentional about making sure that I mention within the realm of my role, that I mention about voting and the impact that it has on mental health and the impact that it has on community. So I'm not stepping outside of my role, but I'm integrating that into the work that I'm already doing. And because I also work with families, I can speak with families about, the reason why I'm saying is that I'm encouraging you to think about your role and the capacity to which you have a touch point for a family to help them make a decision about voting. So when Shanique said that, it made me think about my touch points that I have with families and how I can start encouraging other people to use their touch points. So one of the other touch points that I have is encouraging people to make shifts and changes within their family unit. That means having conversations about voting around the dinner table. It means talking about what did you learn in school and expanding that conversation from things that maybe they learned in school and then integrating that into the household and then making that a new pattern, a new conversation that existed where it may not have existed before.
And so, amen, thank you for that. To add to that, something real easy that we all can do and impact blocks in our community is, guess what?
Yes.
Talk to your neighbors.
Yes.
Educate your neighbors. Use your itty bitty block. That's not asking a lot. Go talk to 10 people and educate them with the knowledge that you have. What they say, each one reach one. Real easy. Some of us should be ashamed. You don't even know who your neighbors are. You should be ashamed. When I was young, all my neighbors knew me. When the light came on, they was all checking me on in the street. When we were running and racing with our shoes off. Going to Roosevelt Community Center. Everybody checked us. It wasn't just my mom. So we have to do that too. We got to be checking for our neighbors and providing them with that education just on the block. We got 65 neighborhoods, and each of you represent a good portion of it. So just do that part too. That's the easy piece that we can all commit to do without any additional resources. Just taking an hour out of our day, knock on some doors, introduce ourselves, have a little meet and greet, tell them you got a little some snacks. You know, everybody wants snacks. And just have it outside and chill and make it real easy. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Joel Thomas Jones. You have a question?
I'll let you finish. On the road. My question is a comment and a question. So you guys were talking about earlier about the power of the vote, and that's what we're talking about today, the power of the vote, and our community situations in which we live in this particular space and time in Dayton. And it's interesting because a lot of our children, 27 years old, 25, 20 years old, and under, believe that this is the way West Dayton looked and was and existed all the time. For some of us who are a little bit older, we understand and know that that is not the case, and that the existence that we're living in right now is a lie, perpetrated by policy. My question is, though, however, just my assessment of this, and I'm just lowly Joelle, one of the reasons why I believe that things continue to happen over and over again for our community, politically and non-politically, is that we have not come to terms as a community what we want. You know what Southport wants. You know what the Oregon District wants. You know what Oakwood wants. What does West Dayton want? And I just wanted you guys to comment on that.
That's an excellent question. But that goes right back to what I alluded to previously. You know, if we don't do it together, and if we do not commit to trusting each other more than we do, we will not be able to put out exactly what we want, because we know what we need. You know, but because we can't come together to say it together, then there's no platform that we can put out there for those so-called powers that be. You know, but we have to do it together in numbers so that they can follow those policies that most of them are tainted, but follow the policies so that they expose themselves, just like 45 is doing, expose themselves to not doing what they are elected to do. But it has to start with us. It has to start with us.
And building off what the other said, one of the things that we suffer from in this community, we have a lot of dysfunction, as Sister Monica was talking about, and ways that we have to heal through that. The dysfunction that we have and the miseducation that we've all been subject to is why this machine of white supremacy reigns and stays maintained. It's based off of our dysfunction and our miseducation. If we start to do exactly what Sister Joelle was saying, where we wake up and start to realize exactly what tangibly do we want in our community, that actually starts to put people to task. Now, when it puts people to task, we also got to keep our foot on their neck, you know, figuratively speaking. You got to really do that, because every other community does it. Every other culture does that. We're the only ones who feel guilty to not think for self and do for self first when we're talking to a politician. You don't have to feel guilty about asking what you're going to do specifically for black people or the African American community, because everybody else comes up and asks what you're going to do for the Persian community, the Asian community, the white community, all that other kind of stuff like that. We have to start to reprogram our mind to really think about sovereignty, because it might be an unpopular opinion, but integration is what really messed us up. Integration is what really messed us up, because statistically we did better during segregation, because we had no choice but to work with each other, for each other, and we did really, really good when we did that. I mean, you look at the numbers. So the fact that integration has happened now, a lot of, and somewhere others, where they prematurely kind of jumped on a boat that they didn't know had a hole in it, figuratively speaking. We can start to rebuild our own boat though. Like, you know, we can start to think about, like I said, start to get back to community minded, to where if we see an Asian store that sells hair, we already know how they treat our women in our community. Stop patronizing that store. Sometimes you gotta do extra research. I know that we're not present in certain realms like we need to be, like construction for a black person or whatever. But there are resources that we have. We just got to study and stay dedicated to these places of employment or these stores that are black owned, because that's the way. That's the way that we can actually start to empower our community and circulate that dollar, to where when it's political time like 2020, it's a turbulent time, they can actually start to look at us as a respectable voice and not look at us as a means to an end, or a way that we got to get the black vote in order to get this or whatever. They really don't respect us right now. So when we really start looking at ourselves really and thinking tangibly, what do we need, and start taking those steps, unifying, as the brother was saying, and taking those steps together, then you really start to see actual cataclysmic change overnight, because they are basically held to task by people who are actually serious and take themselves serious now.
So I'm going to add to that real quick before we progress. We have several people that are in line to speak, and we have 15 minutes left for this session. Did everybody get the community platform? Yes. So this is a list of questions that you can hold people to task that talks about what we want as residents in the Dayton, Ohio community, broken down by education, economic health and safety, housing and neighborhood conditions, arts and culture, education, and collaboration and relationship building. Questions on here include, what is your plan to address the skill gap that exists for residents living in poverty that limit opportunities to obtain higher paying jobs? What is your plan to increase business investments and job creation in West Dayton? What is your plan to address the disparities in healthcare, including high infant mortality rates and lack of access to healthy food options? It is rumored that Reach Out Clinic is closing. Are there resources to sustain this, the only free clinic in the city? What is your plan to help support elders staying in their home and or for protecting the condition of their homes and neighborhoods? What is your position on gun control? This is a list of reputable questions that help them realize what we want and help them address. These are questions you need to be asking every person that's asking for your vote, front and back. Education. How do you feel about restorative justice? What initiatives do you feel should be added to ensure children are being redirected and kept in school instead of suspended or expelled? What is your plan to support quality after school and summer programs and increase access for students living in poverty? What is your plan to increase graduation rates for Dayton public school students? Can you give us an example of a project that you spearheaded or were involved in that shows your ability to build and sustain meaningful relationships and include the outcomes of that project? Y'all got it in your hand. And that wasn't even all the questions. So we are providing you with this to do what? Go home and to do what? To vet your candidates and share it with your neighbors on your block. Each one, reach one. Okay? The next question, please. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, 15 minutes definitely is never enough time. If we put this amount of time in revolution, that's what we get out. So we need to have dialogue where we're not cut down in time in some way. And that's not to put this down. That's a real fact. That's a real fact. I had 3 things, so you pick the subject. It's either going to be politics, psychology, or education. So tell me which ones, so I don't hold the buckets. Just pick.
So I would
pick one.
Okay. I just want to capitalize on what you just said. So the continuation of this actually happened through Mr. Stephen Muhammad, who has the Knowledge Cipher series monthly and more bi-monthly. So this doesn't stop here. He started it in 2019 and it will continue, and he will be posting this on his Facebook page so the conversation continues, and he will be facilitating continued discussion in the Central State West through the Knowledge Cipher series that he's been doing.
What's his name again? I never met him.
Mr. Muhammad. So, education.
Education. Okay. One of the issues I think should be brought up, and I'd like to hear commentary on it, is that I don't think that students in school of any age are ignorant. A lot of them see what they are being forced to learn, and I've heard the term false education, which is very correct. A lot of them are turned off by the fact that they're being forced to learn it. And then they're judged as being a problem, and we get upset when they don't bring home good grades. And my question is, at what point are we going to stop allowing the mythologies that continue to be thrown down the throats of our young people and our young minds and older minds, because it goes into college, like the lie of founding fathers being some immaculate concept of genius, or the Constitution, which should have been thrown out because the basis of it was a slaveocracy. So at what point do we put that on the table and demand an education that addresses the needs we need? And how do we do that? Because other than that, we're going to keep getting what we get. You know, so I just want to hear that, because I don't always hear, we're going to change the lies being taught. We're going to change. There's a lot of mythologies that are continually thrown down our throats, and even as adults, you know. But I just would like to hear, how do we go about it? And I know this is not a 3-second, 30-second answer, but I do think it should be on the table. We don't teach critical thinking. We don't teach the reality of racism. We don't teach the reality of the history that led up to this. We don't teach about Jim Crow is not over, it's modified.
Yes,
We kind of roll the mic down here, so. I don't like to have all the answers by any stretch of the imagination, but I was raised by my great aunt. She was born in 1928. She was one generation out of slavery. I had Before the Mayflower in my home. I grew up watching Mandingo. We grew up having, that's why you can't look at anybody and judge them. You don't know people just by how they look. But I grew up watching and being educated by her. So even though I was going to a systematic indoctrinate school district, I was still being taught about myself at home. Because sometimes, and it doesn't mean that things cannot change, but you know, change can be incremental. It can be very radical at times, but sometimes it can be slower than we want it to be, but it goes back to everybody's conversation, what can I do with what I'm responsible for? And so I was blessed. I didn't want it at the time. I'm like, why am I watching Mandingo? Like I'm 12. But she understood that I needed to understand who I was. And in order for her to do that for me, she had to do it outside of the system while I was still in the system. So sometimes, and then there's also homeschool options as well. I was not homeschooled, but I do understand why people take those options. But I think that when we have opportunities to educate, sometimes we don't take them. And I'm not saying that's what, to his point, I'm not saying you were saying that, but sometimes we don't take them because we don't understand that we can be educators. We don't have to go to school to be educators. And so for me, even though with my students, you know, we showed them different things. I was able to change some of that conversation and talk about how you perceive yourself. Here's an example. You know, here are different things that even though it's not a part of the curriculum, when I'm talking about self-respect, when I'm talking about resilience, here's an example of somebody that was resilient that's not in your curriculum, but can you relate to that? And so I think that we box ourselves in so much that we don't think that we can create change where we are when we are not being responsible for us being educators.
And another thing I want to add to that is the arts and education, the technology that we have today are vehicles to allow our voices to be heard, and we have to present the type of material that helps us, enriches us, and also improves life for others. So my commitment as an artist is to create works that talk about me and the people that are around me, and to document our experiences and our stories. So I think that is something that we all have access to, and it's important that we utilize all of the resources that we have. So the traditional education, but also the non-traditional education.
The battery's dying on that.
I'm so happy to be here. How y'all doing? I just moved here February 2019.
Welcome.
And I love Gem City. My enemies have called me from where I used to live as, are you okay? Because this place is all over the news across the nation. And I think I've fallen in love with you guys. Really. I think I really fall in love with you guys. I mean, I've been here and I've been looking around like, how can I help? Where can I put my money and my resources, my intellect at? And when I walked in here, I seen Dr. Bing, who was my teacher at CSU in the 90s. And so a lot of my friends like, hey, Sue, you gotta come down here and do your thing. So I just want to help all you guys. Each and every one of you, I want to help you because cities that I come from, they're bigger than this. But every time I go down Germantown or 35, I see the crescent of the valley. I say, wow, this is beautiful. But I'm from the outside looking in. And so since I'm from the outside looking in, the beauty I see is not the life that you live. Because the indoctrination of the FOP since the 1800s in Montgomery County, what y'all don't know is how y'all started in the first place. But it's amazing how, as I look at you, I say to everybody who called me, I say, Dayton no longer sees the beauty in the hideous. That's the old thing. distraction. Everything that glitters in what? Gold. Right. And so long, Ohio, the heart of it all, has been bamboozled. Because if you really know who you are, you wouldn't do some things that you find yourself talking to each other about. So, since I've been here for almost a year now, I said, I'm going to start a podcast called Solar Powered Dayton World. Solar is going to be S-O-U-L. Because if you ain't got no soul, you ain't got no power. Solar Powered Dayton World. And I want to encourage you to come on and talk, and we're going to, the whole podcast is based on the Nguzo Saba. Many of you might not know really what the Nguzo Saba is, but the power of the Nguzo Saba has magnified all of our major cities. All of our major cities. To the point where we can now have a political voice, an economic voice, an artistic voice, a psychological voice. So I just want to help you guys. Allow me to help you guys. That's it.
Did I have I think some other people are on the line?
Yes, I think it's two left.
Are you, yeah, they can come up.
I'm just doing my job.
Free soda.
My boss got me up here. Good evening. My name is Brother Dawson. I'm from here, but in a lot of ways I'm on the periphery often. The community that has embraced me the most has probably been Harlem. Spent a lot of time in there. And there's some things that I've been able to see because God has had me stand in some places where I didn't want to be, but I was able to see some things that I couldn't ignore. And so I'm burdened with sharing those things tonight. I'm a macro thinker, and so I'm able to connect dots and see the big picture. A lot of times we may be looking at a piece of bark not knowing that we're in the dark forest. And we're paying attention to an ant and not knowing that you're in the forest and that it's getting dark, so you need to seek shelter. And so for me, microactivity would include things like guarding the black ballot box, monitoring hate speech, protesting white police officer shootings of unarmed black men, complaining about incidents of driving while black, boycotting retailers, organizations, or events. For me, macroactivities include things like invest where you nest, black spaces for black faces, get involved, value enterprise, that's an acronym for GIVE. There are so many people here that I see on Facebook. You raise your hand, you with family. You guys are at the Schuster at the Pondits. You all are going out to Westchester and anywhere but where there's a black-owned venue. And so you all are complicit in your own oppression. It's called food, financing your own oppression daily. And so why are you still going Krogering? Because you cannot be both a protester and a purchaser. You cannot be a boycotter and a buyer. And so if you get your own school, you don't have to be LeBron to get your own school. You want the white teachers and the white system who's taking your tax dollars and your levy to educate your black children. Your option is to remove your black children from the school and start your own, or don't complain, button up. Put your money where your mouth is. You're spending all your money at the Schuster and over at the convention center, and they're opening up more and more white venues. And so is your venue truly a black event if you are being invoiced by a white organization? I was at the Schuster and a black arts organization who get paid by a white organization to send them over to their friend's venue so that they could have cheese and crackers. I was there, they served Dixie cups and they ran out of coffee and they did not replace the coffee. People are laughing at us. If you watch MSNBC, AM Joy, when the election came around, she said, we don't have any data on the Asians or the Jewish people. They don't chase ice cream trucks like we run.
That's right.
I was in Harlem, right along business, I was on the train, and I looked over, what is that big 4-story building blocking out the sun? It was the Jewish library. We're content with having a shelf of black books for our kids. We should have our own library right now.
That's right.
Y'all need to wake up and quit playing, because I do Kwanzaa year round. I'm not wearing African garb. Well, my jacket came from Harlem, I did it on the street. But what I'm saying is, I'm on the periphery, I'm not here to make friends, I'm not a politician. But I want to tell you what the truth is, okay? So y'all need to stay around the white venues, and y'all can kumbaya all y'all want. And y'all giving each other awards every other week. But for which pothole, for which empty building are you getting an award for and taking a bow? You got too many awards, and everything boarded up, and the city is underwater. The city is underwater. Okay, and y'all chase me out of town because I speak my mind. But you know what? Noah was right. He wasn't in the majority.
That's right.
Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. So, with that being said, we have one more question, but again, he dropped some nuggets. So make sure you guys patronize the White House Event Center, which is black owned. Make sure, I know we get one more question, I'm just following up with where the Lord lands me. So make sure you patronize the White House Event Center, and I want to say shout out to Donald Dominique. Could you stand up for a second, my brother? Stand up, thank you. Donald Dominique actually collects books for children that are African American books, so he has created his own library. So those books have been shared with the youth that were in the children's activity for Kwanzaa, and he does this year round. The Black Panther does this year round with the collecting of the books. They do have their own library, and they continue to pass that knowledge on in the community. So if you want to get some of those books, get with Donald Dominique. Like I said, there's a bunch of wealth of doers in this room. You just got to connect with them. We are doing it. If you're not aware, we're making you aware tonight. That's why I had him stand up. Next question.
Hello, my name is Sharon Webster, and I just have one question, and I haven't lived here long, but I've lived here long enough, but I just found out about this today. And my question is, how do other people in the community that look like me find out about you all? Facebook. I don't go on Facebook like that. And a lot of other people do not go on Facebook like that. So because they are not internet savvy, how do we find out? And what does that look like? Because there could be more people here, there could be more people helping, there could be more people doing, but they just do not know about this. And like I said, and the only reason I know is because my son told me. And if he hadn't told me, I would have known. So I just want to know, my question is, how do you go about getting other people in the community and other people around us that look like us, that can do something, that probably will do something if they're knowledgeable of what you're doing?
Very good, thank you. And I'll start answering that question. It goes back to the bells I've been ringing this whole session. It starts with you and your block. If you're not, for those who are not on social media, go tell your neighbors. Go pass the information along when you get the flyers and the pamphlets. The flyers for this have been circulated in the community. For those who are on social media, please like the Dayton Africana Elders Council page. I saw somebody post something earlier about why aren't more churches practicing Kwanzaa, We don't need more churches practicing Kwanzaa. We need churches to support this Kwanzaa so this house can be packed out. We don't need to be in this. The African Elders Council has been doing this for 30 plus years. They've been doing it at New Hope Church for 24 years. Is that right, Baba Bing? So that's what we need to do. We need to support this. And this house needs to be packed out, and the churches can circulate their people here. Because together, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that's the problem. We do that too much, reinventing the wheel. Oh, somebody's not doing it like this, we need to go do it like that. No, you need to go get with them and help them do it better. So, each one on your block, I think you may have another question, or no?
Yes,
go ahead.
Short question. My name is Constance Lester. I am the president of New Hope Lutheran Church congregation. And I want to first thank the panel, and I want to encourage you that I feel in my spirit that 2020 is going to be different. And I want you to know that we have been reading from Isaiah.
Amen.
And the book of Isaiah has the same things that we are fighting today. That the same things that we're going through, Isaiah spoke about. The injustice of judges, not supporting widows and widowers, not looking after the helpless, making unjust laws. So this is not just now, this period. But if you read through Isaiah, there's encouragement. Because through Isaiah, God tells Isaiah, for these nations that have done this to you, Israel, my children, I will avenge. It is knee service time. It is prayer service time. It is fast serving time. It is crying out and believing we have a God that can do the unjust justice, and can do the widowers justice, and can do the poor justice. But it is need service time. I asked a young person why they don't vote. He said, first, they don't make it easy for us. Second, they're under their parents and they cover them so they don't feel the stress and the strains. And third, they're not really knowledgeable of who is running in their community, yet alone the local or the higher up. So if we want young people to vote, this is what we have to do. Ask them why. Gather this information, because information is knowledge and powerful, and then you can make a plan where different churches will go to and talk to this area and split, and it's called divide and conquer. Joshua did it, Moses did it. There's some good plans in this book. Let's just use what God gave us and stop trying to come up with something different. And remember Isaiah and Revelation. We win in the end.
That's right. We are going to dismiss. It is 8 o'clock on the dot. I think our youth, our children have already dismissed. Not yet, don't leave yet. I need everybody, if you went through the Facebook invite under Neighborhoods Over Politics, please write a review of your experience tonight, please, on our page under this event. If you saw it there, wherever you saw it, just leave a review, because I forgot to do surveys. But I want to pull Mr. Shackelford up to end us with the 7 Harambe's, and if you could please explain what that is before we go into it. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, check! 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 Harambe simply means pull together. I just done this Cleveland clinic with 300 kids. So we're going to do 7 times. You notice? 7 principles of KWANZAA. Check. All right, put your hands up. Come on. Stand up. Stand